Coaching in Session,
your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Welcome, Karen Theimer, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Of course. Today we're going to be talking about your work freedom coach. I am definitely an advocate for freedom. Freedom to say what you want, freedom to live how you want, and the freedom to have no limits is basically, what we stand by with the podcast and, of course, the business. But many people, they choose to allow their freedom to be snatched away daily, whether it be from their own deliberate accord or from, just from what society says they can or they can't do. And I'm excited to get your take on how you help people reclaim their freedom and to live a life that's more free. So if you could, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and of course, how you help people?
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Michael, for having me on your show today. I feel very honored to be on this podcast and share my story. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Karen. I live in Ontario, Canada. And it's raining here today. But anyway, how I got into my journey is that I say I'm a cancer thriver. I've gone through divorce. I had a lot of issues with my dad. And so, I've had my fair share of stuff happen in my world, right? And this is how we get our stories and how we become who we are in many ways. However, for me, after my divorce, and then I was turning 50, this was back 2017, something like that. I was just like, wow, I'm turning 50. Now what? This is how the first part of my life looked like. How do I want to live the second? Right. And I just felt stuck. And I thought, okay, well, here I am. I now have a single income. Now what do I do? And I remember going to an event. I'm part of a network marketing company that I've been with for a long time, and it's really changed my world. And I remember going to a network marketing event, and the speaker had said one sentence. If your life hasn't changed, well, maybe it's more than one sentence, but if your life hasn't changed in the last year or two, go find out what your blocks are. And I thought, oh my God, I have lots of blocks because my life hasn't changed. I was stuck. My business was falling apart. My marriage fell apart. Just all these things. And I thought, I don't get it. So I reached out to one of my mentors and I said, Dr. Bob, I said, what do I do? I've got this thing called a block. I don't even know what that is. All I know is my life felt like it was falling apart. So I went and he said, go hire a coach that understands your industry of health and wellness and go see what your blocks are. So that's what I did. So that's what started my journey, is that I started to understand how my mind was wired, how my brain was wired, and all these limiting beliefs that I had. Because most of the stuff that happens to us, there's a limiting belief somewhere. So fast forwarding, when we had the lockdown, I just went, you know what? I'm going to take a coaching course. I want to help people. So I took NLP, and also I'm a breathwork facilitator. And I thought, you know what? I want to help people change their world and find their freedom. So what does freedom mean to other people? Because freedom is different for everybody. For me, it's about having the choices, be able to come and go when I want, be able to say what I want in a kind and compassionate way, of course, be treated with compassion and kindness, and also do the same with others, right? So I became a coach, decided to call myself a freedom coach. And so I've been doing that for, whenever lockdown happened, 2020. And mostly I help women who are, 50 plus, looking to 10x their confidence. I do have men as clients as well. However, it's, a lot of us have a lot of confidence, but what if you could 10x that confidence? How cool would that be? Because you can't have confidence in everything, right? So that's what I do, is I help people, move forward without the guilt, without the shame, letting go of limiting beliefs, and find that thing that gives them that freedom, that peace, that joy in their world. Because I feel like we need a lot more laughter and joy in this world, especially right now.
Very true. I love one of the things you said earlier. I'm not even sure you were thinking about it, but I was. When you said it was raining outside. Sometimes in life it's going to rain, right? So, it's not always going to be sunny days. And I can't imagine how many people, they want those sunny days where they can go to the beach and they can go drive with the windows down. Here in Texas, people don't know how to drive when it's raining, right? Because we don't get a lot of rain. But recently, we've been getting torrential downpours of rain. So I think people are acclimating to the rain, saying, I have no choice but to drive in this rain. But then if we not talk about just driving in the rain and how it can inconvenience your day, we can talk about what rain is. And I think of when we're younger, right? We have so much more freedom to how we see the world. And then the limits we basically instill in our minds, start to tack on as we grow older. For example, my son, he's 3. He goes out, he steps in puddles and he's jumping and he's getting wet. He doesn't realize that he's going to get cold. He doesn't realize that I have to change him and dry him off and give him a bath. He doesn't realize how much work he's causing me, but he's enjoying himself. He's enjoying life. And it goes to that quote of some people get wet and some people feel the rain. And we have gone so far from feeling the rain where many people, they don't even feel life. How can you help people, or how do you help people start to feel life again?
Well, I love a great question. And I love what you were just saying about your son, because here's a little thing that I love to do. I always say this world is like a giant playground. And it's important to bring out that inner child of us to allow ourselves to play. So yesterday, I'll share this quickly. Yesterday, it was raining and we had huge puddles. And I live out in the country and I was wearing my rubber boots. And you know what I did? I started jumping up and down the puddles and splashing in them and getting my dog wet. So anyway, but it was funny because it just brought me back to this allowing myself to play like a child, right? However, sorry, what was the question again?
Basically, how do you help people to live free like that? Like, how do you help people to say, you know what? I'm not worried about, jumping up and down in this puddle, or I don't want to be like Peppa Pig. I'm an adult, right? Because we give ourselves this identity that we're grown up and that we can't play, that we can't enjoy the little things or the simple things.
Yeah. So what I do, great question. And thank you for the reminder of that. What I teach people is to tap into that inner child. Like, how do we let go of the fear of judgment? Right. In order to get the fear, to let that go. And it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight because so many people, especially women, are afraid of being judged, right? Because it's just society and life, right? However, if we can drop the guard, get uncomfortable or get comfortable with being uncomfortable and allow yourself to play, whatever that looks like. Coloring. I mean, adult coloring has come back. Right. And one of the things that I give my clients is I challenge you to color outside the lines. That was given to me at one point, and that just weirded me right out. But once I did, I was like, oh, that's actually not so bad. And it helped me tap into that inner child. Right. So it's, again, allowing ourselves to play whatever play looks like to you. Right. And so it's asking people, what do you want? What do you like to do? What brought you joy as a kid? So that's how I help.
Mm-hmm. I think of it's like a saying, dance like no one is watching, because it's a whole judgment aspect or piece too, because people are so worried about being accepted. I believe, it starts when you're like a teen, the teen acceptance. I mean, is paramount to them, right? They have to wear the clothes. They have to speak the lingo. They have to watch the shows. And even if they might have no interest in it, they do it because they don't want to be outcasted, because to them, to be outcasted is like a death sentence, right? Like most people, if we're teens at least, if you ask, would you rather be popular or a nerd that gets bullied? They'll say, I would rather be someone who's not bullied and, to be at least more popular. It doesn't mean that the whole school has to know you. It just means that, you're not on the radar, because, people who might be the outcasts or the people who do things differently or get honors or whatever it be are going to be ridiculed more, because I think what happens, especially during that time, is that they're not focused on their growth in certain individuals. And so when someone else is focused on their growth, they belittle that because it makes them feel better. Because if someone is inadequate, the best way for them to feel adequate is to belittle their, success or their growth. Because if they say, well, that success and that growth is nothing, right? The subconscious mind doesn't realize, what they're saying, right? Because they can look at the other side and say that growth is actually more beneficial rather than me just living my life and going out and drinking and partying and doing whatever. we allow ourselves to go through that phase, or so many people allow themselves to go through that phase, and then it just compounds when you turn 21. Like, oh, I'm gonna go party, I'm gonna go drink, and I'm gonna go have a good time, right? Because we have been waiting 21 years of our life to go be free, right? Because there's laws and restrictions, right? We can't drive until we're 16, which is a good thing, and 21 or 18 to smoke, which is a good thing, and then 21 to drink, right, which is a good thing. But then again, there are caps and there are limits, because we can look at what happens like in America, or states that have longer or later limits to like drinking or smoking or driving or whatever. Because if you look at like Italy, for example, there's kids who are drinking wine when they're like 11, 12 years old, right? But they're not going off and partying and saying, all right, let me become an alcoholic, because they have already kind of accepted it's like, oh, it's nothing special, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm not putting it on a pedestal. So sometimes we're going to have these things in life that is going to say, well, I have finally attained this, right? I can do this finally. I can go, I like to put it this way. As a kid, you might love nothing more than to eat all your Halloween candy, right? You want to eat it all, right? You get it all, you want to eat it all. And as an adult, you can go out and you can go buy the Halloween candy, right? You can eat it all if you want to, but in a sense, you're like, I don't want to do that, right? You know better, right? You know the cavities, you know how it's going to make you feel, the sugar rushes or whatever it be. You don't do it, even though as a kid you said it would be so nice to eat all the cookies and all the cake. And then as an adult, you don't do it. So it's like we learn from our experiences, but at some point we are naive and we don't necessarily know what we don't know. So when it comes to people and the freedom that they're looking for, right? Some people, they say they want to be financially free. Some people, they want to retire. Some people, they want to be free to travel or relationships or whatever it be. But then once they get it, they realize maybe that wasn't what they were exactly looking for. So how can people become clear on what that freedom is for them? Because anyone can go and buy like a box of Girl Scout cookies and eat them all in one day, right? Like that's not hard to do because they're delicious. But the self-restraint aspect is so key, right? Because there's good freedom and the bad freedom. So let's start to look at both, if we could, the good freedom and the bad freedoms that people can be living in.
Well, is there a bad freedom?
Well, I don't know. Is it a good thing to eat a bunch of cake?
So I think it's two separate things,
Yeah,
right? Like,
exactly.
no, for your health, it's not, right? So, I mean, and I have a sweet tooth. So
Me too.
I think like freedom, there's emotional freedom. How do you want to feel at the end of the day? Do you want to feel happy, joy, peace, calm? Like, how do you want to feel? So I think there's an emotional freedom, right? Where you just get to a point where it's like, wow, like if someone, I call them triggers, if somebody that maybe used to, and it's usually family members, but if somebody, is going through something, it's looking at them and just going, wow, they're going through something and this is the best that they can do, right? But it doesn't affect me. And I think that's part of emotional freedom, to not get caught up in other people's stuff, being complete at who I am, being comfortable with who I am, to love who I am, and be happy who I am. I think that's part of the emotional freedom, right? I want to feel peace. I want to feel calm. I'm starting to discover more bits and pieces of how that really feels. Like it's just recently, I'm a very heady person. So I'm learning to, go from my head and into my heart. Well, what does that even mean? And what does that even feel like? Right? Like I had no idea. And it's only recently, because I was at a retreat, that I kind of broke that shield. I wanted to know, what does compassion feel like? In my head, I know what it is. I feel like I'm a compassionate person, but I don't know what it feels like. So it's recently that it's like, this is what compassion feels like. This is what it feels like to open my heart and really just, be compassionate and understand that people are going through their stuff. I think also there's your financial freedom. Obviously, who doesn't want money? And if people say they don't want more money, then there's a limiting belief there, right? I get clients that are like, oh, I don't need anything. I'm fine. I'm happy where I'm at. It's like, okay, well, who told you you can't dream? Somebody's stopping you from dreaming, right? I think it's important to learn how to dream bigger and maybe dream even a little bit faster, right? So then there's the financial, there's emotional, financial, geographical freedom, meaning that, if you like traveling, if you want to just pack up and go somewhere, do you have that option? Right. So I think there's different types. And then there's spiritual freedom, believing that there's something bigger than what we are as humans, which I don't know a lot about that, but I'm starting to learn a little bit more about this spirituality. I definitely believe there's something way bigger than what we are out there. And I do believe in the power of manifesting and the universe and all that, law of attraction. So I think there's different types of freedom. So it's like finding out from people, again, what brings them joy, what brings them happiness, what do you want? And a lot of people actually don't know because they're not taught this. They're not asked that. We're very clear. I say we, because many of us are very clear of what they don't want. Most people go, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want that in a relationship. I don't want that in my job. I hate this and whatever it is. Right. So they're very clear of what they don't want. So when you ask people, well, what do you want instead? People are just, what? I don't know. That's a great question, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, do you ever dream? I just had this conversation with a client yesterday, a new client about that. And he's like, but I don't dream anymore. So I just asked him, well, what if you were to dream, what brings you happiness? So he came up with this whole list.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you want to do? Well, if I could, I would do this, this. And okay, so you can dream and you can feel. So it was interesting, right? He's like, that just stumped me. I'm like, awesome, good.
It's so interesting how people, they just kind of fall into life so quickly. Think of when you're all done with school, for example, and you get your career. Maybe you get your dream job and you go from dreaming about your dream job to living it now. And maybe at some point you stop focusing on the joys of that job and more focus on the profits of the job, right? The paychecks you get, the corporate ladder you can climb. And at some point, you find yourself at maybe the top CEO or the top manager of the company, and you look back and you go, what have I been doing? Because we lose focus sometimes. We might, look at all these different freedoms that you said, and I love all emotional, financial, spiritual. I started to think of physical freedom, right? People sometimes want the physical freedom to do what they want. This happens a lot with elderly, right? They don't want to be in a nursing home. They want to be able to travel and to do everything they want to do, right? They want that physical freedom, right? We have it, and people don't realize they have it until they lose it. Then we look at the mental freedom, which could be aspects of the emotional and the spiritual. But when it comes to the mental, I think many people don't realize how imprisoned they are in their mind. We can look at certain communities or cultures. We could just look at how people are operating in their days. I remember a long time ago, I had a kid. He was 4 years old, and he was one of my swim students. And it was so funny because he just started to learn how to swim, and he was probably swimming for maybe around 3 months at that point. And typically around that time, you become a very strong swimmer, especially with the trainings we did at the swim school. He was a very good swimmer where he could swim across the whole pool at this point, right? And it's a pretty decent sized pool. But in his mind, he was still thinking about or living in the boy who couldn't swim. And so when we started to say, hey, you're going to swim across this pool, he looked at me. He says 4 years old too. He's like, are you crazy? I go, first of all, who told you that? Someone's crazy. He probably got him from, his parent or something. But then the second thing I asked him was, why do you think you can't do it? And then he started to think about it, and he was like, I don't know. I was like, did your mom tell you that you couldn't do it? Did your dad tell you that you couldn't do it? Did grandma or grandpa tell you that you couldn't do it? Did I tell you that you couldn't do it? And he's like, no. So it's like, then who told you? And he was starting to realize it was him. He's 4 years old, so he's not really going to go too deep. And so I was like, you're going to swim across this pool. He was like, I guess I'm swimming across this pool, right? He swam across the pool, high five, he's like, I did it, right? And that solidified our works and our training just moving forward. Because the next time I asked him to swim across the pool, he didn't call me crazy. It would be crazy for him not to swim across the pool at that point, because he learned that he could do it. And so, right now, there's a lot of people who are kind of living in a safe zone, right? They're living within their comforts. They're living in a box, if you would. If I said that you can only live in a box is that freedom? Is that, it might be comfortable. I'm going to give you your TV. I'm going to give you some food. I'm going to give you your favorite drinks and everything. Right. So yeah, sure. I can make it very comfortable for you. But then if I said you can't get freedom, right? I think of the Maya Angelou poem, the caged bird sings for freedom. Right. And basically the bird is singing, and the bird is seeing all the other birds flying, and all the people who are listening to the birds, in the cage is like, oh, it's so beautiful, right? Because the birds are singing and it seems so happy. They're chirping, but they were just looking up at the sky because they wanted to fly too, right? They wanted that freedom. And I think at some point, people are living in those boxes and they're looking up at the sky and they want some level of freedom and they hope things will change, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. Or maybe they don't even necessarily want to do the work because success, for example, is not beautiful. Like, yes, the idea of getting success, you're seeing someone's success can be beautiful to the eyes, but the process can be daunting for many people, right? The long nights, the days, whatever it be, people are not going to step past that comfort zone. So now that we're getting into this foundation of people can be living within their limits and their comfort zones and their boxes, and they might see that they have all of these allotted freedoms that they could be going in, but there's something that is going to be still holding them back, and oftentimes it's going to be themselves. So when we start to look at all of these pieces of the puzzle, what would be maybe your 5-step process for helping someone saying, hey, let's start to get out of our box. Let's get out of our comfort zone. What or how would you approach that process?
Great question. It depends. Again, it depends. Everybody is different. So I have a client right now, and we're just about to wrap up our coaching journey together. Well, this part of it, and she wants to start a business, right? And she wants to get into energy work and all this. So I said, perfect. I want you to go out and reach out to 3 people. I like keeping things really, really simple, right? Because if you make it too big for something, there's the part in their brain that says, oh my God, this is scary. I'm getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger. I'm going to die, right? And then that's what stops you. It's safer. It's easier to stay in the safety zone. And that's what your brain is designed to do. It's too scary to be on the other side, right? But if you allow yourself to just do one little thing and realize it's not that complicated. And I think if people understand the process of the 4 levels of competence, which is, and I'm going to come back to the story in a second, which is you watch somebody do something, it looks easy, right? We'll say like doing a podcast, being a speaker, riding a bike, swimming, whatever. You watch someone do it and you go, oh, that's easy. I can do that. And then you go to try it. And then it's like, oh, then you mess up. You forget your lines. If you're a speaker, you do too many ums and ahs. I'm working on that one. That's a challenge for me. One of my goals is to be a public speaker. However, so when you hit the second level and you go to try it, you fall down, you mess up, you can't do it. The part of your brain, which is the amygdala, is the siren that says, like the sirens are going off saying, this is scary. I'm going to be like whatever the chatter is in your mind. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to fall. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm a this, I'm a that. Because it's trying to keep you safe to go to do the personal growth, right? However, if you say to that amygdala, say to that part of your brain, you know what, I'm safe. I'm not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. I'm not going to die. I will be fine. It's supposed to be messy to begin with. Honestly, these steps changed my world. It's supposed to be messy. You're supposed to fall down and pick yourself back up again, And then you go and you realize, okay, well, maybe I need some skills. I'm going to use me in the public speaking because a couple of times people have handed me a microphone and I'm just like, now what do I do? I'm sweating like crazy. My heart's racing. I don't know what to say and a whole lot of just gibberish really in my head. But I realized, you know what? I need skills. You can't just hop on a stage and think you can do this without having some skills. Well, some people might be, but it's rare. So I've started taking a course, like a workshop, I joined something called Toastmasters because they're teaching you how to speak. Okay, so here I need the skills, right? Then the more I practice speaking, whether it be on podcasts, on small little stages, in front of a group of people, whatever that looks like, then it's like, oh, it just gets easy. It's like riding a bike. The more you practice it, the better you get. And then you can teach somebody else. It's like swimming. I'm guessing you teach swimming, obviously, right? You weren't born being a swimmer. You had to get skills, right? And then to be able to teach. So I teach people those 4 levels and just say, it's okay to be messy. You want it to be messy because that's how you learn, right? This lady that I'm working with, one of her tasks was to reach out to 3 people that you're going to practice doing the energy work on. And of course, each week she hadn't did it. She hadn't reached out to, and these are friends of hers, right? So I said, what's holding you back? And she goes, I don't have everything all in place, because she didn't have somewhere to send people, like to be able to work on them. I said, don't worry about that. That's the next step, right? We'll figure that out together. There's options. So what I did with her, I said, you know what? Here's what we're going to do in this session. You're going to send an email out to these 3 people, right? And you're going to send an email. Hey, I'm practicing this. My coach has given me this. Here's what I want. I'm looking for 3 people to practice on. You know what? She did those. We sat there. Took her 10 minutes, something that's taken her like weeks and weeks and weeks of stress. Took her 10 minutes to create the email, maybe even 15, but to create the email and then send it out. And you know what? All those people reached out and said, I'd love to help you out. I'd love to give you feedback. I'd love for you to work on me. And I asked her, I said, how did that feel? And she goes, you know what? I feel empowered. I feel amazing. That was so easy. All this anxiety we give ourselves to something that's just so simple, but there's a deeper fear. And that's what I like. I love to help people get through that fear, to just break through it, to step out of their comfort zone. Because I 100% know they're going to be so excited once they do it. And I love when I see my clients break through that. And it's like, yeah, I did it.
Very true. I have a book for you. It's called Steal the Show by Michael Port. And it is exactly what you're looking for when it comes to public speaking and being the best public speaker that you could ever be in your life.
I love it.
And in that book, he talks about how you can be really good. For example, I've done the podcast quite a bit, and I can probably go on stage and I can be decent. But if I prepared something and I did what Michael Port talks about instead of the show, oh man, it would be a phenomenal speech. Because there's a difference between just kind of doing things and it's okay, and then doing things and it's amazing. And that could be life, right? That's being deliberate, right? There are so many people who can half-ass things in life, right? You kind of pay attention when you're at your kid's recital or something, right? But you're on your phone, right? Your kids are paying attention to you, right? They see you're not paying attention to them, right? And now that you seem checked out for them, when you want to be checked in, they're checked out for you. So it's like a 2-way street, right? But then, I'm sure parents don't necessarily see it that way, but it's very similar to life, right? It's like basically, what you put in, is what you're going to get out of it. Because if you're not putting in anything, like you want the results, very similar to that client, right? If you're not sending those emails out, what are you going to get, right? Maybe you'll get lucky, right? Maybe someone would inquire about your energy work or whatever. But that, is going to be a passive thing, right? And typically that comes with years of work, right? And basically, creating, a name for yourself, because there's companies that don't even have to do any type of advertising because people already know. For example, Porsche, right? They know they don't have to do any type of marketing, right? People know, oh, if you have a Porsche, you have some money, right? And if you have some money, you need a Porsche, right?
Right.
So they already know how to captivate the people who are going to be purchasing the cars. It's about elegance, right? So if you want to have an elegant life, if you want to be viewed as this person that's a person of status. And I think we have to get rid of the stigmas, because I think stigmas are dangerous in the sense of, if I drive a BMW, I'm successful. If I drive a Bentley, I'm successful. Or if I drive a Porsche or have a Maserati, like all these fast cars, I could go on. But, all these cars are basically a status symbol. When we start to look at these symbols, right, they could be a good thing, right? And I'm not saying that if you drive a BMW, you're a stuck up person who, thinks that they're better than everyone else, right? Like certain people love BMWs, right? But sometimes when they're asked, why did you choose that brand? they don't know why. When we start to look at like these outside stimuluses of prestige, right? Whether it be schooling, Yale, Harvard, big colleges here in America, cars, like what we just talked about, houses, right? 5+ mansions, like bedroom mansions with 7 bathrooms or 50 bathrooms or whatever it be, right? So we look at, oh, that must be better, right? What is better for a person, right? And I know you said early on, everyone is different, right? Like everyone has their own individual needs or desires. But if we had to, guide people to say, this is the lifestyle that I think you would rather enjoy rather than the lifestyle that you've been told.
Sorry, what's the
It's a conversation, and basically the idea, right, behind this
the idea?
is I'm gonna say what you need, Karen. I'm gonna say you need a house. It doesn't matter the size, but it has to have a white picket fence. You need to have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. And if you don't have a boy and a girl, you have to keep trying until you get one of each, right? Right. So again, I'm just telling you what you need, right? You need to have a car, right? It needs to be able to fit your whole family in it, right? So whatever it be, you need to have that car, right? Your car needs to be a certain color. It needs to always be clean. And if your neighbor gets a new car, you have to get a new car. It's called Keeping Up with the Joneses. And then if you like animals, you're going to get a cat or a dog. All right, either or both. All right. If you lose a cat or a dog, you have to keep buying one because there's going to be a stigma on you if you don't have a cat or a dog. You have to
have
go
a
on.
horse.
Yeah, you have to have this much land. You have to wear these types of clothes, right? So I'm just going down a list of all these necessities that I'm giving you, but at the end of the day, they might not be anything of importance to you.
Okay, got it. All right. I just wasn't sure. I was like, what's the question here?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love your stories. You've got great stories, my friend. I love listening. I'm like, wow, he's got some good stuff here. I think people have told us what we need all our entire lives. As a kid, we're told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. You should be doing this. Don't do this. I mean, kids need guidance. I'm not a mom. I'm a 4-legged mom. Like, well, I'm not a 4-legged, but I own animals.
Yeah.
So that'd be weird. Anyway, so we're told all this. So this is why and then if somebody dreams about the life they want, they're told they're living in the fantasy world. You dream too much. You're living in that was my story, because people kept shutting me down. You live too much in Karen's world. This world doesn't exist. So I stopped dreaming because I didn't think it was possible, and I think we're taught this. So when we ask people, when we ask our clients of like, what do you want? You just ask people, what do you want? People don't know because you've been told your whole entire life that you do need to keep up with the Joneses, and in the media, in movies and TV shows, like all that, and TV shows and stuff. If you're not tall, thin, long hair, you're not beautiful, you don't have this, as a woman, have this sexy body, you're not going to get the cute guy. So then women will get this body image of like, especially single women, of like, I'm never going to find somebody. Like, what's wrong with me? Where it's like, wait. Nothing's wrong with you, right? I think it's important to stop looking at the outside world and all these material things to make you happy, because a lot of people have a lot and they're miserable. People will say, oh, money will buy you happiness. Well, it can help for sure, but it's not going to buy you happiness. Happiness starts within you. You need to be happy with who you are, love who you are. And I think this is a big piece, is that we go to the outside world to find things that make us happy, or we listen to what other people are telling us what to do. Like, you need the White House, or, the house with the white picket fence and the dog and the cat, and let's throw out a horse, because I used to always want one. But, and I think we listen too much to that to finally go, well, wait, maybe this isn't what I want. I need to find my own mind, my own voice, and learn come back to what is it that you want.
Mm-hmm. Very true. I thought when I was still living in Connecticut, I live in Texas now, and I was looking at neighborhoods I would buy my home in. It's very, very wealthy neighborhoods. And I was like, okay, I'm going to live in this home. It was a very nice home. It was like perfect for a single guy. And I was like, okay, I was looking at houses. I was like, this would be a nice house, right? But then I fast forward my life till today, right? I was like, that would be a terrible choice of house just because of the location, the practicality of it. I mean, you have kids, they go to break the windows. I mean, it's like, it's stuff that could happen with that house. It wasn't friendly for our family. And, sometimes we can only see as far as we can see. That might just be, looking out the door that if you're in a room, right, you can just see out the door, right? Can you see into the kitchen? Can you see more? I think one of the reasons why people like open concept living today is so they can see a little bit more. So they are not afraid to, widen their view. Because at some point, back in the, early 50s and 60s, homes were, very claustrophobic. And now you can't sell a home unless it has 9-foot vaulted ceilings. We got some issues today. We need some room to move, right? And we need some room in our life to be flexible and to grow. And there's so much room for us to expand. And I know the world might tell you otherwise, where you can only go or do this much. But if you look around you, you have so much possibilities. And, this is why I love the work that you do, because you help people understand that the possibilities are endless. You help people understand that if you are stuck, you can get unstuck, right? Right now they might be living in a mess, but it doesn't mean we can't tidy things up. And that's the important part, right? We can make some changes. And of course, the work that you do is helping people make those changes. It might not be heaping a hurdle, all at once. It might just be a step at a time. And I think people have to understand that change can take time, right? It's a process. It's a journey sometimes. But that journey, that process can be a beautiful thing, right? Because when you're deliberate, like if you're truly paying attention, it's so enjoyable, right? I think of like when I go for a hike, I'm not thinking about just getting to the top of the peak, right? When I'm hiking, right, I'm taking pictures of rocks and bugs and, my dog or whatever it be, right? I'm going on that journey. I'm not going to say to myself, you know what? I'm only going to take a picture when I get to the top because that's the goal. Right. I'm appreciating everything around you or me at the time. And people have to do that for themselves, right? Appreciate what's around you. It doesn't mean that you have to be satisfied with it at all points and say, okay, well, this is, my circumstance. So I have to just accept it fully and always have it. Right. If you don't like something, change it. Right. I always say you're not a tree, so move. Right. Change your environment, right? Very, very similar to how I moved from Connecticut to move to Texas because I love the people. You can move to anywhere you want in the world, right? Most people, they stay stuck in the same city, the same town, the same state, and they don't experience the rest of the world. The world is waiting for you people, and you just have to be brave, right?
Yeah, it's so true. You have to get to a point where you want something better. Like I kept saying to myself, there's got to be more to life. I've said this since I can remember. There's got to be more to life than what I'm living, and I don't know what that is. I still don't know what that is, but I know this, what I surrendered to is realizing this is really a journey and enjoy the moment, enjoy learning how to become present. We're either stuck in the future, welcome to anxiety, or we're stuck in the past. That's depression, right? And there's this, I mean, part of it, there's obviously more to it than just that, but that is a big piece to it, that it's important to learn how to be present and enjoy the moment and the journey. I finally joined a gym and I hated gyms. Like I hated gyms. I'm like, it's like a fashion show and everybody's out to, you can never find equipment and I don't want to have to figure it out on my own anyway. However, I'm turning 60 this year. That still blows my mind, even just thinking about it or saying it. But it was like something lit up for me. And my friend introduced me to this gym called F45. I think you guys probably have it in the States too. But anyway, and I was in the Cayman and she goes, you want to go to the gym? And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking not really, but I'll go anyway, right? Because, I'm at her place and let's go, right? I thought, oh, why not? I'll come home fitter than I was before I went there, right? So she took me there. But you know what? I was like, I actually like this. It's 45 minutes. Somebody else is telling me what to do. There's a process to this. I don't have to wait anything. It's like you're in, you're out, which is perfect for my attention span, right? And when I came back, I thought, you know what? I'm going to look for this F45. Why do I recognize this name? Well, there's one like literally a block over from my work, from my business. And I just thought, I'm going to go over there. And you know what? I joined it and I'm loving it. I love it. Not all the time I want to be there, but I go and it's like, this is fun. This is challenging me. I don't care what I look like. There's a lot of people that are in better shape, but there's also other people that are not. And that's okay. I realized I surrendered and I let go of the attachment of, I have to have this tomorrow. Because I'm sorry, you're not going to have this beautiful, perfect body in 24 hours. It's not going to happen, right? I think the sooner we let go of that attachment and learn that this is a process, it's the journey of who you get to become along this. And I'm like 4 months in, like I've always horseback ride, but I think I'm about 4 or 5 months into going to the gym. I committed to at least 3 days a week. I'm like, okay, in order for me to justify spending the money on it, I need to at least commit to 3 days a week. And I've been consistent with that. I think I had 1 week where I couldn't, but that's besides the point. It's okay, right? So it is the journey. It's the letting go of things that are keeping you stuck. And good luck on figuring this out on your own, because if you can label the problem, if you can name that problem, I'll tell you now that is not it. And I think it's important for people to understand change is happening all around you anyway. So why not get comfortable with getting uncomfortable? And it doesn't have to be painful. And it is letting go of understanding how the mind works and the inner chatter. And I call it the monkey mind, because man, that monkey mind will take you on a journey.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. So it's understanding your thoughts and that your thoughts don't define who you are. And it just wants to keep you safe. There's a reason why you get all this chatter. So it's understanding that and how you can tame it.
Very true. And as you said, we all have blind spots. And as much as you would like to be able to see in your blind spot, you turn around, you make sure you don't hit the car. You got your blind spot detectors, right? They're beeping, they're flaring. But even then, right, there's still something you can't see. And that's where a coach, a mentor comes in and they can see those blind spots maybe as clear as day to them. It's like, wait, and then they say it to you, and you're like, wait 1 second. You're right. Because sometimes even if we know what it is, right, we won't allow it to come to our conscious. So we have to have someone to say it out loud and say, hey, this is the issue, right? This is the problem. And then right there, your life begins to change. Of course, I'm not saying you can't have an amazing life by yourself and you can't do things by yourself, right? Like, yeah, sure. But life is not meant to be lived by yourself, right? You have company. You go to the gym 3 days a week and you meet some people you enjoy sometimes, and sometimes you don't want to see them, right? It's fine. So, some days you want to, ride together with someone. You want to, chat with someone over a coffee or a tea. That's the beauty of life, right? That's the freedom of life. And we just have to understand that it's okay to ask for help, right? It's okay to say, like right now I'm not living full, or I'm not living fully. And you get to make a choice if you want to live fully or if you just want to live halfly, right? Halfly is not a word, but I'm making it a word today, okay?
Can't make up words all the time. It's all fine.
Exactly. I typically don't, but halfly is the word of the day. It's the word of the podcast. And it is something that we're going to kind of go off with because, I don't want you to live a life that's half full. I want you to live a life that is full. And it's important that you give yourself assets and people that are going to help bring that fullness into a reality. And so, Karen, our conversation today was definitely one where people can start to think about that full life, where they can start to think of processes that they can implement or start to, be more mindful of, so they can say, okay, if I do this one step, maybe some change can happen. But, as we begin to wrap up, I would love to, of course, get some final thoughts, some final words from you. And then please tell the audience where they can find you, reach out to you, website, social media, etc.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I've had a lot of fun and learned so much from you on your show here. So thank you.
Thank you.
And you've got great energy. Again, it really is, what's one thing you could do today? Just one thing you could do today to help push the needle, to move. I hate the word push because push feels like it's so heavy. To move the needle forward, right? What's exhausting you in your life that needs to change? And that's if you want to change. I mean, if you're happy with where you're at, fantastic, enjoy. But if you're not, then there's something that needs to be shifted.
And where can people find you?
Oh, right. That part too. Right. So people can find me on Facebook, Karen Theimer, and I'm getting more on Facebook. I'm getting more on Instagram now. I've now, been consistent on Facebook, so now moving over to Instagram. I got a little overwhelmed with social media. It's all good. So yes, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can go to my website, KarenTheimer.com. I have a fantastic PDF you can download called The Mindful Decluttering. It's about letting go of things that are taking up space in you energetically, any projects that you've started and haven't finished, for example. So yeah, go download that and let's connect. You can reach out to me.
Perfect. And I'll make it easy for everyone. All the links will be right down below. So her website, get the PDF, check out her Facebook page, what she loves, and then the Instagram when she's building, but she's going to love that too. It's all the same thing, to be honest. Social media is social media. I'm not a fan of social media. That's why I have an assistant who does social media. I don't want to do it.
Lucky.
But in the words of Journey, right? Journey says, don't stop believing, right? And it's the idea of, there's something that you can believe in, right? There's something that is more than what it is right now. Because you could have a goal and you could say, yeah, sure, I got to the goal. And, what's the goal beyond the goal? I always like to ask, right? There's something else, right? Because life doesn't end when you say, when I'm 65, I'll be happy, right? No, right? Because that's not life. Even though we can look at the statistics and, people at the age of 65 who give themselves the idea of retirement, they die within 10 years because there's no purpose, right? So, using those words from Journey of don't stop believing, I want to kind of use your words, right? Don't stop dreaming, right? Don't stop, being that youthful soul that at one point you saw the world for everything that it could be, rather than maybe your mindset today of everything that it just is, right? Life can be so much more than what it is right now. You just have to choose for it, right? You just have to be hungry for it, right? I think of Ronaldo. He's a soccer player, and his son, he's a very athletic boy, and he sees his father, right? And the father was talking to one of the coaches, and the coach was saying he's really good, right? And the dad says, yeah, he's really good, but it depends on his hunger, right? Because there's an aspect, right? It's that 1% aspect that not everyone is going to have, right? You have to be hungry for it. You have to have the drive for it. You have to beat everyone else when everyone else is just doing enough, right? Kobe had a thing, Kobe Bryant, the basketball player. He had a thing where he would train before the team. And so he always trained 2 to 3 times more than the team. And it was funny, at some point, some of the team members called out and he says, I'm going to train the same as Kobe so I can beat him. He started to train even more. He started training about 5 times a day. And then basically Kobe said, he's like, you're not going to out-train me, right? You're not going to outwork me. And then eventually they fell back into their stoop, right? You have to have that hunger of being able to outwork everybody, even yourself, right? Because at some point you're going to say, let's take it easy today. Now, I'm not saying you can't go on vacation and spend some time on the beach, but when you're all done with that, right? What is your drive, right? What is the freedom you're trying to attain? And so all the links are right down below. Reach out to Karen to start to live and to start to attain that freedom is so important. And we can't stop dreaming. So I do want to thank you, Karen, for coming on, spending some time, and of course, talking about your work today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.